Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What is up, guys? I'm still out of town, so the setup is a little bit rough. The lighting's not great, but I'm just going to continue to power through and put out content. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my start sits at the quarterback position. So I'm going to be breaking down every single Week 16 matchup and listing every starting quarterback as either a start or a sit. So do I trust them in my fantasy lineups? While you guys are watching, if you're enjoying the content, just do me a huge favor, hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel. But let's jump into the Thursday night football game where we have the 49ers taking on the Titans. And personally, I just don't really trust either of these quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo is kind of a nice floor play that you can snag off the waiver wire. Maybe your quarterback is hurt or somehow gets COVID. He's not the worst pickup, but he's not someone who I think is very reliable in my lineups and really just doesn't have much of a ceiling. The next guy, Ryan Tannehill, I think he's also a sit. He's really just underperformed all season long, and even though he may get A.J. Brown back for this game, still just not feeling it. He wasn't producing with A.J. Brown earlier in the season, so I don't see why that's going to change here against a defense that's pretty solid in the 49ers. Then moving over to the weekend, we have the Browns taking on the Packers. I'm assuming Baker Mayfield is going to be back for this game, and he hasn't been startable all season long. So he's a sit for the Packers. Aaron Rodgers just continues to ball out up there in terms of MVP candidates. Probably a two-horse race right now between him and Tom Brady. We'll see how that shakes out. But A-Rod is definitely startable for fantasy and is someone I would trust in my lineups. Then we have the Colts taking on the Cardinals. For the Colts, Carson Wentz just not feeling it. He can just be straight up phased out of games because Jonathan Taylor is so dominant, and I just don't want a quarterback in my lineup who has the potential to only be completing 5 passes in a game. So Carson Wentz is a sit. For the Cardinals, even without DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray is still a very solid fantasy quarterback and a really, really nice QB1 play. Moving on to a divisional game between the Giants and the Eagles. This whole Giants team continues to be a mess. Joe Judge came out and basically said he wasn't going to reveal which quarterback was the starter. At least he hasn't revealed it yet. So we're looking at Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm. Hopefully we see Fromm. I'd rather see the younger guy than a career backup who we know what we have. Fromm could be a potential starting quarterback in the future. Maybe we'll at least get to see it if he starts, but it really doesn't matter either way. Both quarterbacks are completely unstartable. On the other side, with Jalen Hurts, continues to ball out with that rushing upside. When you can rush for 10 plus touchdowns like he has done this season, you are in very rare company. He's just going to continue to produce, and he doesn't even have to play well to put up solid fantasy production. Then let's shift over to the Rams-Vikings game, and this is the first matchup where I'm going to be starting both of these quarterbacks. Matthew Stafford, just balling out all season long. Really, really nice, mid to back end QB1 production. For the Vikings, Kirk Cousins did not play well against that Bears secondary. This is definitely a tough Rams defense, but he's always going to be a borderline quarterback 1, so he's probably going to fall at QB 12 to QB 14 range, and I think he's definitely startable. Moving on to the Bills taking on the Patriots. Josh Allen is a high-end quarterback 1 every single week. For the Patriots, I just don't really trust Mac Jones. We don't know what kind of workload he's going to have, and also this is a tough matchup against a really solid Bills defense. Then we have another divisional game between the Buccaneers and the Panthers. For the Bucs, you continue to fire up Tom Brady as a strong play. He may be more of a mid-tier quarterback 1 without Fournette, without Chris Godwin, potentially without Mike Evans. This is a solid, Panthers defense, but I still think he's a very reliable play. Getting Antonio Brown back, I don't think the Le'Veon Bell signing is really going to change much, but I still think he's going to have a fair amount of success. For the Panthers, I don't know what is going on here. So Matt Rule came out, said Cam Newton was going to play a prominent role in the game as a starter, but Sam Darnold was going to get some work. So I guess they're going with a little bit of a quarterback by committee. I'm just avoiding this entire thing. It's a little bit unfortunate because Cam Newton is someone who could be startable if you knew he was going to have the job the entire game. Unfortunately, we just don't know that. So you just want to avoid this quarterback room at all costs. You also want to avoid these rookie quarterbacks playing in this next game between the Jaguars and the Jets. Don't think I need to mention a ton here. Neither of them have been solid fantasy producers, so I'm just going to be fading them once again. Same thing here in this Lions-Falcons matchup. Jared Goff played well last week. I just don't think, that's going to be a trend moving forward. So he's a sit. Matt Ryan just has no weapons. Really hasn't been fantasy relevant at all this season. So he is going to be a sit as well. Then kind of breaking this run on sits, we have the Chargers taking on the Texans. Justin Herbert, really solid high-end quarterback one play, especially in a nice matchup here against the Texans. Davis Mills on the other side has had some solid moments, just don't have a lot of trust there. He is going to be a sit, doesn't have a lot of help around him. Then we've got a solid QB matchup between the Ravens and the Bengals. For the Ravens, you're going to be starting whoever the QB1 is. So if Lamar Jackson is back and healthy, you plug him in as a solid start. If he's not and it's Tyler Huntley, you feel confident with Huntley also. So whatever guy goes, that's the one that you are playing. For the Bengals, you continue to fire up Joe Burrow in that Kirk Cousins range, QB 12 to QB 14, somewhere around there. Then we have the Bears taking on the Seahawks. This one was honestly kind of tough. I could see an argument for both of these players being starts. I honestly went with sits for both. Justin Fields, I think he's going to be a fantastic quarterback. I just don't think he's going to be getting it done this year on a consistent basis with that coaching staff and with those weapons around him. For the Seahawks, Russell Wilson has just not been getting it done. He hasn't had a ceiling since he's been back from that finger injury. The offense just looks a little bit off. He's probably the closest to a start. So, if you're looking at this and none of your quarterbacks are listed as starts, he's not the worst play. I'm just kind of losing faith in this offense as a whole. If you can't even get DK Metcalf going in a game with Tyler Lockett out, it's going to be tough. Even though we had the Ramsey matchup, still, you've just got to be able to get your wide receiver one involved. Now let's shift over to the Steelers taking on the Chiefs. And for the Steelers, Big Ben is a sit. This offense just hasn't had much juice as of late. On the other side with the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes is, a solid quarterback one weekly play. Then a divisional game between the Broncos and the Raiders. For the Broncos, it looks like it's going to be Drew Lock getting the start. Teddy Bridgewater took that pretty big hit. He's in concussion protocol, but it doesn't look like he is going to clear it before the game. So you're sitting Drew Lock. It really doesn't matter either way. Whoever's the QB1, you just don't want to be playing them. For the Raiders, same thing with Derek Carr. Hopefully we get Darren Waller back this week, but still, even with Waller back, I'm just not really trusting Carr against a pretty solid Broncos defense. Then on Sunday night, we have a divisional matchup between the Washington football team and the Dallas Cowboys. For Washington, I'm assuming they're going to have Taylor Heineke back for this game. Really doesn't matter because I'm not trusting any of these quarterbacks. On the other side, with the Cowboys, you fire up Dak as a solid QB1 play. He's been a little bit disappointing this season, but someone who I do think you can trust in your lineups. And then in the final game of the week, we have the Dolphins taking on the Saints. For the Dolphins, Tua has been playing better. This is just a tough defense to go against with the Saints. We saw them just shut out the Bucs. Tua has been solid, but I just don't think that's going to lift him up to a start. I would rather fade him this week. For the Saints, Taysom Hill didn't have a huge game against the Bucs, but that's going to happen, when you don't get into the end zone. I still think he's a start with that rushing upside. If he can just throw for a touchdown, rush one in, he's going to have a really solid fantasy day. And that is going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys enjoy the content, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. You can go check out all my other start sits on my channel, running backs, wide receivers, and then tight ends. Those should all be up by the time you're watching this. So thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.